Welcome again to Identity Manager version 7 bits. In this video we want to talk about the pretty new feature in Identity Manager 7 named the OAuth2 Authenticator. The Authenticator itself is not a very interesting feature, especially because you have only to activate it and it will work. And this happens only if there is an OAuth2 provider somewhere installed. In a productive environment, not a problem because your customer will have done that. In a demo environment, it may be necessary to do that on your own, and because of that, we show you as well how to install the RSTS Auth2 provider we have. Have fun with that video now and continue watching. Let's talk about something that is named the OAuth provider. A good business scenario to understand that feature, for example, maybe there is an application and that application wants to authentify against a standard target system like an Active Directory is, but unfortunately the application stands in a zone without directly network connect to the Active Directory, and it is not really recommended to configure that Active Directory to be part of that zone. In this specific situation, it is very nice to use a claim-based authentication and to install somewhere a web service, and this web service at the end will provide a token, and the token is based securely on target system that stands behind a firewall or something like that. For this, there's an open standard that can be used, and this is the OAuth Authentication or OAuth2 Authentication, and with Identity Manager 7 we are supporting that feature as well. Before we can start with that, the first thing you need is something like an OAuth token provider, which is a service that makes the authentication for you. It's a web service that provides an authentication token to an application if it's asking for. What we want to do in that specific video is we want to install a token provider, which comes with an Identity Manager setup set DVD, and we will authentify one of our front ends using OAuth against that specific token provider, and at the end the backbone that authentifies the user will be an Active Directory. To show you how OAuth at the end works, we need first as a prerequisite our token provider, which is a web service, and that web service could be part of your installation on the customer side. There are many of these installations are able to do so. But for any demo environment or for testing purpose, you may install such a service first, and so we show you that here as a prerequisite. To install such an OAuth token provider, you can use the setup DVD, especially because there's one of these tools as a third-party tool installed. So I start my Outrun exe from the setup DVD. This time I don't step to installation, I step just to other products. On the side of other products, there is a redistributable of the STS tool. STS tool, it's a token provider. I click on install and I answer my question twice with run, and if that is done, then a setup set starts. First thing I have to do is to sign into my database. This is just to change some parameters and some configurations together with installation. Therefore, I have to select first the database. Here we are. I have to sign in with a user account who is able to write configuration data, so I take my system user for that. And with the help of this system user, if I take the right user, I will get the installation page for that specific tool. I can see the installation folder, which is the program files folder here on that specific server for x86 applications. I need as well a signature certificate for that. I will just take the one here for redistributables here for demo purpose. I have as well to make sure that a URL is possible. This is that one here. I need that later on, so I copy that just in my clipboard. I need a password so that I can sign into the configuration page later on. And at the end, I need a service account that is able to run the service, and the according password. If all of that is correctly configured, I get the message that the account I configured have not the right privileges. I step over it and let the complete system start to set the privileges and to install that specific service. After this installation is quite finished, then I close that web service now and start a test to figure out if it is completely fine configured. Therefore, I just open my browser, and because as we all know, browsers on a server are always a painful thing because of all of these security configurations. I do that from my workstation, so I switch back to my workstation. There I open the browser and type in the following URL. It is my machine where I have installed the service on the words rsts and admin behind. And I get the typical message about untrusted certificates. That is because I've used that single certificate for demo purpose. I click on understand the risk, add an exception, confirm the exception, and get a starting page. I want to sign in with my admin, and I need the password I've configured before. I don't want to remember passwords. Here we are. And that shows me that my OAuth provider in the meantime works pretty well. Authentication string, that is my default Active Directory that is already used. It's pre-configured, some server settings, and so on and so on. If you are interested in something like that, you can just step through all of these things. The good message is only to test something that there is no need to change any of these configuration parameters. After I'm sure that the service is up and running, I open my designer to show you the configuration parameters accordingly to the OAuth service. And in designer, in the configuration parameter section, you will find the main configuration parameter QER, and underneath of QER there is a person subnode and there is a OAuth authentication subnode, and there you will find a number of very interesting configuration parameters. So let me talk about some of them. First, good thing, because you will not remember everything I will say here. If you click on one of these parameters, you will see always a very nice description that tells you what the parameter stands for. First, there is a certification thumbprint that is automatically inserted during the installation. You can specify the client ID if this is necessary, especially if you install more than one of these authenticators on the same machine. Because we are just working with headers here, you have as well to configure the search column, which is standardly the object GUID for an Active Directory account, and a search table in the database, which is the Active Directory account table. So from the token provider provides, our system takes the token and steps to the Active Directory account table in the database and searches there for the object GUID. And if that is the right one, then our system knows which user it's according to that specific token and can sign them in with the correct permissions. Another interesting one could be the Logon Endpoint, and here we will see our configured server, IAMSO3, where we have installed the service. There may be some other parameters of interest as well, and if you are an expert for OAuth authentication, then you will be able just to step through all of these parameters. I'm sure that thing will be completely described in the manual as well. The only thing you will not find in the manual, it's more or less the installation of this OAuth service provider, especially because that is not a part of our product. This is an additionally product that you can use for demo environments. And after having configured these prerequisites, we can now start to test our authentication. A last prerequisite is left, and this is the authenticator we use for that. Therefore, I have to step to in the basic data of my designer, have to select my authentication modules. And on the authentication module side, you can see two authentication modules, OAuth and OAuth2. Both have to be enabled. This could be done here. And in a fresh installed system, initially there stands here a false, and I have to turn that to true, and the same for the second entry as well. Because out of the box, the OAuth authenticator, it's not enabled. But in this system it is, and so I can directly start testing. To test my OAuth2 provider, I start on the server where the complete service is installed, and the first step to do is to open the certificate manager and to export the certificate we have created together with the OAuth2 installation. Once that tool is open, I can just step to the certificate section of personal certificates and export my specific STS certificate I've created before. I let all the options like they are set per default and export my certificate. The only thing I have to specify is a specific name, and if the name is typed in, then I can store my certificate, for example, to the desktop. I take that certificate and store that certificate with the help of the Explorer here to my data exchange folder structure, which is on another server. This is to get it easier selected from the PC workstation I want to do the tests with. Back on my workstation, I just install the certificate. And the only thing I have to ensure is on the second page that this certificate is stored in the personal section of my machine. By the way, if I don't do this, that means if I don't install that certificate on the machine I want to test with, I will not be able to open a specific connection using the OAuth2 connector. Now I start, for example, my manager. This time I have to select the OAuth2 Authenticator. I let the auto login checkbox checked and connect to the database using that specific authenticator. A second form opens. This is a form that only appears one time and now asks me for credentials to authentify myself against the STS service I've already installed. Here I have to sign in with an Active Directory user that already exists. I'm using Tinezuk. I need as well the Active Directory password, which is the standard password in my environment. And I check the box keep me logged in because I don't want to repeat that many times in that specific session. And after some seconds I get an error message that tells me that there's something not okay. So I close the complete front end, that means the manager, reopen the manager. You can see this time I have to accept a certificate which is now downloaded, and with the help of this, being auto logged into STS, the manager opens normally and I can start to work.